In this video, I'm going to unbox these Axia Foam Limbs that I just got in today. I'm going to put them on the GMX 3 bow after I show you them up close and tell you what I think about them. And then I'm going to go and shoot and tune the bow at 30 meters, so that way I'll also be able to tell you how they feel. I already reviewed this GMX 3 Series riser. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'll put links in the description below and a card at the top up there, so you can check that video out first. And I'm very interested to see first what these limbs are about, how they look, and to check out some of the new things that they have on them for this year. Personally, what I'm really excited to see about these limbs is how they feel in the bow, because the Win & Win NS limbs that I did review the GMX 3 Series on, I put them on. They're a little bit older model limb. They're still a good limb and I like them, but the bow didn't jump very hard and launch out of my hand. So I'm really looking to see if these limbs do that. In this box, there's a few stickers, a small little manual, and keychain, things like that you get with it. And then we have the new limb sleeve for this year. I guess it was actually last year. One single zipper, no Velcro, and two spots to slide your limbs into that are separated by a piece of like looks like neoprene or something like that. Yeah, neoprene. Here's the limbs. Feel very lightweight. I'd be interested. I might grab a set of limbs really quick and weigh these just to see what these weigh compared to others. But they sure look very nice, just really quick glancing at them. Let me pull the little protective covers off and this warning label that they come with. I ended up getting 42-pound longs. And these are the, like I said, the Syntactic foam core limbs. They look really good. In person, very matte. I like the matte finish. I think Hoyt has made a very good decision to go to matte limbs. Their clear coat on their high gloss stuff wasn't as ideal and pretty as I thought it would be. I mean, it looks great, but it doesn't seem to last a lot. So go into this matte finish. There's a lot less as far as the mill thickness is concerned, and it seems to be harder for whatever reason. I don't know what the finish actually is. Now, what I can see, just looking at the side profile, obviously the core is black foam, black syntactic foam, and it is 2 layers of foam. It's not one single thick piece. So if you look really close, I'm going to try to get it to focus here. The black line, the purplish black line, I guess. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I can't quite tell through the viewfinder, but there's a dividing line between the 2 layers that runs the whole length all the way down the limb. So it's 2 layers of foam in the middle, but sandwiched between layers of carbon. No real flaws. This one has like a bubble in the foam, like a little divot right here below my fingertip. See that little hole, that pinhole? That's really the only flaw that I see in the sides of the limbs. I don't see any issues in the finish. I mean, these are absolute premium level finish, surface quality, in my opinion. So yeah, these are the Grand Prix Foam Axia 42-pound longs. So you can see the specs there. And new for this year are these pads here at the end where the tiller bolt would sit. And what that's doing is allowing the actual tiller bolt to not sit directly on the limbs themselves, so the clear coat won't fail. I think they're made of Delrin, if I remember correctly. And they said they're inserts, so I'm curious if it's drilled and glued into the limb or if it's just some sort of a sticker. I can't quite get my fingernail under them. They don't want to come out. And maybe I will try to pop one out and see what actually is going on there, because I'm curious. And I'm curious to know how this will affect and if they made any sort of adjustment to the base of the limb to keep the geometry, for lack of better terms, or where the spot of this is. You know, when you crank it all the way in, now are we taking the limbs past maximum all the way in compared to where we used to, because the thickness of these dots is fairly considerable. It's not a small amount. Bring the caliper out. It's just over 1 millimeter, 1.07, and in inches, it's right about 25 thousandths of an inch, give or take. It's a considerable amount. So what I'm asking is, did they adjust the height of the limb at all? Because as you put the tiller bolt on it, and now you add spacers, it's already preloading the limb down some. So are you now overdoing the limb at some point? I don't know. This is the bottom. Let's check the fit on the new GMX 3 series. It's actually much better compared to just about all the other Hoyts that I've dealt with. It still fell out. When I first put it in, it felt nice, so I was expecting it to stay, but it still fell out. So sorry about the cringe there. So it does want to stay for the most part, and then if I wiggle it any, it drops. So that's the bottom, and then the top, better on the top. A little bit more firm, and it wants to stay. It still falls out if I rock it. So it's better. It's not ideal, but it's definitely better. At least better compared to what I have been seeing personally in regards to what's been coming out of Hoyt recently. I want to measure this and see. 375 on the top and the bottom. And the bottom's right at 375 as well. So I think it's just that these tiller bolts, like I said in the review of this GMX 3 series, they are slightly undersized for what I'd like to see. I think they were in the neighborhood of 371 or so, which isn't too big of a deal. Yeah, 372, 371, somewhere in that range. Like I said, I already showed you all that stuff in the review of the riser itself. So what that's telling me is that between the limbs and the riser, there's still about a 0.003 of an inch discrepancy as far as the tiller bolts being undersized. So if it was me and I was still competing, I'd be putting these precision tiller bolts in here from Kaminski Archery. The reason being is that our tolerances are very, very high. And when we have this bolt here that's marked 375, the limb fitment, when the limb is supposed to come at 375, we get a perfect fit in the interface between the limb and the limb bolt, because it makes a huge difference for consistency and grouping down range. If you're interested in checking out precision tiller bolts, I'll have links in the description below and a card at the top up there to my website, jkaminski.com, in case you're interested. I make them for Hoyts as well as Win & Wins, and they definitely fit more than just Win & Wins, because a lot of other bows out there use M13 by 1.25, which the Win & Wins do, and they have been confirmed to fit on the newer SF risers, if I remember correctly. As far as torsional rigidity on these things, they are just about as stiff as the stiffest limb I've ever felt as well. I don't have my gauge here to measure to see how much it would actually deflect, but it sure feels very, very stiff. I don't have the original Axias here, so I won't be able to measure those as far as the mass weight is concerned. But I've got a few other limbs that I'm going to measure really quick because I'm just curious, because it does feel fairly lightweight. I'm going to measure them in grams. That limb weighs 178 grams. This one's 177 grams. These are NS limbs. These are also 42 longs. Win & Win limbs 188. So same weight limb, same length limb, 188 grams from Win & Win. That's a couple years older model. And I'm going to grab, I should have a set of Velos, 186. So I was right. The Axias are a little lighter than normal limbs, are about 10 grams heavier each. What that matters, I'm not sure. I would guess it's probably going to make the arrows act slightly stiffer compared to usual, so you may end up getting a little bit of speed out of them, which is a potential good thing. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I am going to swap out this middle plate for the high plate, and then I'm going to put my precision tiller bolts on here, get this bow strung up, and start working on getting it aligned, get the center shot set, so that way we can get out there and start shooting this bow and get it all tuned up. I am really, really curious though on these little dot things. They don't want to come off very easily. And I don't want to be able to, I don't want to ruin this. Stuck on there quite well. It is Florida and it's very hot, so if they're not pinned and they're glued on or something like that, they will end up moving. Oh, I'm getting this one to move. And if it is indeed pinned, I'm gonna really like this personally, I think. Just being gentle so I don't break it or tear it. And it is. So they say insert. It is because it's an insert. So I'm really happy to see that. And of course, like me, I drop it immediately. So it is an insert. It is drilled. The end of the limb is drilled. And then it's that little piece there that slips into the limb. So that's nice. So that way they won't move. Now, will they sustain lots and lots of shots and lots of loading as far as the pressures are concerned and things like that? And if you're going to adjust them all the time, who knows? Over time, people will find out. But it sure looks like they'll be fairly durable because they're fairly hard. And it doesn't seem like they're going to just slide off the limb like those other previous stick-on dots did in the past. So that's an absolute win as far as I'm concerned. So I'm actually very, very happy with what the limbs are. And I'm excited to get this thing all set up, dialed in, and start shooting it. One thing that I hope isn't going to be an issue over time is this here. Crack that Allen wrench free, and you know, some of the ceramic coat's coming off. Now the powder coat did the same thing, and the painted versions were even worse in regards to that, because it would actually like chunk off sections of the riser. And this is one of the things that's a little, I don't know. I like how clean the back of the Hoyts are when the holes are there as far as, you know, access to the tiller bolts. But I end up kind of egging out the hole from torquing stuff so much to make sure things are tight. Yes, I know I tighten things probably too much, but that's what I do because I want to make sure that nothing comes loose. I've seen tiller bolts come loose far too often over the years, and you know, it worries me. So I don't want that to happen to my stuff, so that's why I really make sure it's tight. You can see what they look like in the GMX 3 series. Top limb, I'm going to put it in the tiller bolt backwards to show you. It's definitely a lot snugger. And it doesn't want to come out. They still go in just nicely. It's not like they're too tight or overly require a whole lot of force to get in. This is the bottom. Show you the same thing. That one was the loose one before, and it's still sticking in. So hasn't even walked its way down at all. Nice and firm. Exactly how I'd like to see it. That's why I put them on. Get the tiller set here. So we've got 7 3/4 on the top and 7 11/16 on the bottom. So these Axia limbs have a natural tiller split of a 1/16 of an inch shorter on the bottom. So geared slightly towards recurve shooters. 7 7/8, 7 3/4. So just about that 1/8 inch split. I usually like it right in that neighborhood, so I'm going to leave it there. Brace height, real high, 9 1/4. I usually like to run mine right around 8 7/8, give or take. So the win and win limbs I had on here previously, I had set at 8 7/8, which is exactly where I'm at now. And I've had to remove probably 15 plus twists, maybe even 20 twists to get it down to this level. So either the limbs don't have nearly as much preload in regards to the load on the string, so it's not pre-stretching it a whole lot here at brace height, or the limb tips on this bow are slightly further apart to make this bow slightly longer. If I remember correctly, most Hoyts have slightly longer tips, or the tips further out on the limbs. It makes it a little smoother. Next, I'm going to line my limbs, and if you've watched this channel for any period of time, you know that I like to do this with a stabilizer, a known straight stabilizer, most importantly, and I will be using biter blocks. So if you don't have any of the tools here, like the limb alignment blocks, the biter blocks, bow vise, things like that, I will have links in the description below. So that way you can grab some on your own. Limbs align very easy, no surprises there. All right, and just like that, the bow is preliminarily set up. Like I said earlier, I went to the high plate here on the actual Vertitune. And the reason is because when I first originally shot this GMX 3 series, well, number one, I had a rest already set on a middle plate from testing that I was doing. And the bow didn't seem very happy to me. For whatever reason, I was shooting lots of high right arrows. A lot of those were my mistakes. But I felt like some of those definitely should have went closer to the middle than they did, but they didn't. So just, thinking over myself, all the things that I've changed and adjusted and found over the years, I found that I just liked the high plate when I did testing in the past. So I put the high plate back on. Even though the lower geometry of this lowered grip is there, the rest follows. So everything is lower, not just the actual grip. So even going to the high plate, I'm still fairly low relative to where I normally like it. Supposedly the bow is better, in this new configuration, but I still put the high plate back on. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what I did here preliminarily with this setup, and then what I'm about to go do outside and shoot and tune this bow, I'm going to recommend this book here that I wrote. It's called Tuning for Performance. It's a really great manual that takes you through step by step how I go through my entire process from taking it out of the box just like you saw, setting it up and aligning it here, tuning it, and doing arrow selection, all sorts of different things. And I will have links in the description below to Tuning for Performance. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to retie these knocking points. I'm not going to bore you with that, and then we'll head outside, get this bow tuned, and I'll let you know how it feels with these Axia Foam Limbs. All right, I'm out here all set up and warmed up at 30 meters. I have a camera downrange, so you'll be able to see the impact points the entire time. I only have one bare shaft today, and I really don't want to strip the vanes off of these arrows because I just recently fletched and I have 6 good ones. I only have 7 of these 450 X10s built up that are cut and ready to go. I have another set, but I haven't cut them and I don't feel like it at the moment. So hopefully I'm going to get away with getting a good tune here today, or at least close enough to be able to go back and shoot some at 70 meters at some point. So these limbs, compared to the NS limbs already, as far as drawing them back, they are very smooth, very easy to pull back, very just friendly to draw back. They feel very stable, so at full draw there's not a whole lot of movement going on as far as wobbliness or anything. It's already feeling quite good right away without needing much in the way of tinkering or adjustments there. The sound is not as nice as the NS limbs were as far as what I hear audibly. It's more of a lower tone, and I don't know, I just wouldn't say it's as crisp. It's just more soft, I guess. I don't know. But then again, the limbs feel smoother, so softer as well. Because smoother doesn't necessarily mean better. It depends on your preference. Like, this is just very easy to draw back, easy to get into position, relatively easy to get through the clicker. And I'm not noticing like the limbs building tension or stacking or something like that in any particular part of the draw cycle itself. Now, I wouldn't say the bow is jumping all that hard either. I still don't feel the bow launching very hard out of my hand. Normally I tend to run 410s, so it's a higher draw weight. So maybe that's where I'm feeling the difference, because let's let's see here. If I've got about a 10% range of adjustment, I mean, I should be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 44 pounds instead of 48 pounds. So maybe that's the difference that I'm feeling as far as the amount that the bow is coming out of my hand. But still, I'm not feeling like the bow is jumping very hard, at least not as hard as I'm used to or actually prefer. I prefer a bow to really launch out of the hand. Got a bare shaft here. That one wasn't the greatest shot, so I'm going to go down and get him. Still looked a little bit on the potentially stiff side and a little bit of a high knocking point, so I can adjust my rest to compensate. So far, like I said, definitely the number one thing that I would note about these limbs is they feel very smooth, very easy to draw back, not feeling much in the way of like stacking or tension really anywhere in the draw cycle. It's just very easy to get back and feel very, very smooth in general. Vibration, there's very little. This riser does a lot to kill that vibration, of course, and it just doesn't feel like anything's wrong as far as that's concerned. The consistency of the delivery of the arrow so far is pretty good, but I've only shot 7 arrows, so I'm going to keep shooting and we'll see what I can find later. So I am gonna move my rest up a little bit because it definitely showed a bit of a high knocking point. Let's see if that helps. I'm going to pull a couple of ounces off my V-bars after this end. Give it a little bit more forward balance. It just doesn't feel like it's got enough on the long rod, and I don't want to add any more weight. Yeah, that was a much better shot. So very, very stiff. So I'm gonna go get them. I'm gonna turn the tiller bolts in 1 full turn, take 1 ounce off of each V-bar and see how it feels. All right, I took the tiller bolts in 1 full turn and then I bumped the rest up just a ever so bit more, and I had to add 3 twists to my string to make sure the brace height was good. It had settled a little bit, plus adding the 1 turn shrunk it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, the limbs, they sure feel good when you shoot it. It just, even when you make a mistake, the bow still feels happy. I'm not sure as far as feedback it's given me yet, but the bow still wants to do its job, which is really nice. Because sometimes when you make mistakes, other limbs can be really kind of come apart at the wheels and they just kind of violently give you a lot of feedback. I think a lot of that probably has to do with these limbs being so torsionally stable as far as resistance to twisting. Oh, I forgot to take some ounces off the stabilizers. All right, so I took 1 ounce off of each side rod. So in total so far, I've taken 2 ounces off of the back, 1 off of each V-bar, and 1 onto the long rod. So this bow is balancing a little more front heavy than I normally am. And according to what I've learned in the past in regards to lowering the grip on a bow, that seems to hold true as far as what you need to do to make the bow still hold correctly. Maybe it'll help you set up yours. think it might be a little happier this way. Definitely grouping. I mean, I'm at 30 meters, so it's not too bad. That's better. Still a little on the stiff side. So I'll probably bump up the draw weight another half turn maybe, and possibly increase my tiller split as well, just because I'm still getting that low bear shaft and I've got my knocking point tied. I don't want to have to retie it. My rest is as high as it goes, and I mean, it feels fine on my fingers, so I'm going to increase the tiller split, which will lower the knocking point and hopefully help that. Just a little trick I can do without going and retying knocking points. But the bow definitely aimed much better, behaved a little bit better as far as when I go to pull through the clicker, how well that stays there and that sight pin doesn't want to move. It gives me a little bit more opportunity to be a bit more aggressive to set that bow off, and it seems to hold better. So I think I'm on the right track as far as that is concerned. But I wouldn't necessarily say the bow jumps any harder. It rolls forward harder, but it still is not popping out of the hand as much as I would want it to, or as much as I have become accustomed to and enjoyed shooting with. So I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, and maybe it's just my perception is off. I haven't shot many different bows as far as recurve is concerned lately, and I should do that and make sure that it's just not my feeling, but the bow's just not jumping very hard. So I don't know why that is. Yeah, aim's so much better now. I mean, that last group down there, last end, I could fit all 6 arrows inside my hand, so it's grouping very, very well here at 30. So that one is a funky release. The arrow still had a chance to go in the middle, and it did, but the bow definitely sounded different. I don't know if you could hear it, so it did give some audible feedback, which is good. Good positive stuff. Definitely much happier with this aiming pattern. Still doesn't jump though. Alright, that one went a little weak. Not the best shot. The knocking point's finally okay. But I'm going to go do that one more time. And right in the group. So that one was a decent shot finally with the bare shaft, and it went right in the group. So I'm going to call that more than acceptable as far as tune is concerned. I could go and take this to 70 and shoot it for score if I wanted to, but I really need to get my shoulder worked on by my wife Heather, because I feel like it's limiting. You know, this has nothing to do with the bow, so forgive me, but it's like every shot's just coming out like this, and I just can't maintain that power in the posterior part of my shoulder like I normally have. I haven't had much in the way of body work from her at all, and I've been doing a lot of stuff lately, and my body could really, really use it. So I think that's just killing me, and that's why I keep shooting those high right arrows right now, or at least it feels like it, and so hopefully she'll be able to figure that out. Anyway, so as far as the Axia foam, syntactic foam limbs are concerned, they feel quite good. They look great. The finish is great. Those two dots on the ends, I'm glad, where they push against the tiller bolt, I'm glad that they are embedded into the limb and essentially pinned in place by drilling the limb and putting those things in place. So the limbs should last a little bit longer. And, there's a little bit of damage on one of them. Interesting. What's concerning is I can definitely see that they're crushing. When I was trying to pull the one out of the actual limb, I noticed that it was quite soft, right? Because it was flexing a lot. It's not a rigid piece of plastic, and I don't know, it could be Delrin, but I'm not sure if it actually is. I've never seen Delrin molded. I've seen Delrin only machined. So it is possible that it's Delrin. I'll believe them because they said it. But if you look, it might be hard because of the lighting. But if you look at the edge here, because the limb bolts are pretty much all the way out, so they've been touching right there. And I adjusted them a couple turns, right? You'll see that they're squashed towards this end. They're actually bent this way because they've been crushed by the forces being exerted onto the actual limbs themselves. And so I wonder over time how that would hold up. Because if they're already showing that they're starting to crush, they may eventually just crush to nothing, and then it'll be on the limb itself anyway. And I think when the limbs are this matte finish, I don't think it really matters because the clear coat generally doesn't have any issues. And I don't know if you can see it, but they sure look squashed. Like they're smushed on this end and taller on this end. So for whatever that's worth, I don't know how long that's going to last or not personally, but I do overall really like the feel of the limb. As far as when I pull it back, it's extremely smooth. It's very easy. There's nothing harsh about it in regards to when it builds tension, and it just feels like it'll be overall a user-friendly limb to shoot. Now, some people really like it when it starts to stack in regards to getting much heavier through the clicker zone so it feels more stable. So if you're that kind of person, I wouldn't necessarily say this particular limb, at least where I have the tiller bolts set out, roughly 4 turns out from bottom, they don't seem to stack much at 29.5-29-inch draw length, give or take, just for what it's worth. These are long limbs, like I said, and they just feel very, very smooth as you draw them back. They're also very consistent in the manner that they act when I release. Even when I'm making mistakes, they seem to want to push the arrow relatively consistently for whatever that's worth. They don't seem to change a whole lot in the way they feel when I let them go. They do change slightly on the tone audibly when I let them go, so that is a good thing. The only thing I really don't like about them is they just don't really have any sort of aggressive snap to them. There's no punch, there's no hit, there's no real dynamic property as far as delivery is concerned for whatever that's worth. I don't know why, it just isn't that way as far as what I'm feeling. But I did make stabilizer changes and it seems to make a huge difference. Removed 2 weights, 1 from each V-bar, and added 1 on the long rod, and now the holding pattern's excellent. So in a little bit, I will go to 70 meters after I get my shoulder fixed and score this bow at 70 so you can get a better idea, and I can get a better idea as to how it acts under more shooting conditions. Hey, if you like this video, consider sharing it. Genuinely, it helps this channel out. It's the only way this channel grows. I don't operate any other social media, and I rely on you to spread the word. Also, if you wouldn't mind, please consider supporting this channel. I purchased this equipment myself so I could give you an unbiased review because I have nobody that is paying me or giving me this equipment to hope that I do a good job in regards to pumping up their company. So this is all honest from me, from my heart, and hopefully it gives you, the consumer, a better idea as to what you potentially may be buying. There's many different links in the description below, and I can't thank my supporters enough. Thanks for watching.